me begin. Let me report. Yeah, well, I can't wait to hear what Nick and his team have to say about Guyana and Belize. Welcome to Caribbean Thought. This is lecture 10. And we will continue with the group presentations this week. This week, group two will present, and afterwards, group two will present on Belize. But before you guys present, there's something happening. Jamaica, I don't know if you guys see what's going on in terms of the tariffs. The U.S. has charged tariffs on the world. They have charged a tariff. That questions whether or not we live in a world that promotes globalization. But globalization, or neoliberal globalization, has always been a problem. Of course, the book, your textbook, the title of it is Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty and Resistance. And that book is a book that is beyond its years, because in 2021, when that book was published, I show how globalization has disproportionately affected people of the global south. Now in the US, the justification for tariffs, the justification for charging tariffs, which many Americans agree, is that the US, a lot of countries have been milking the US. The US have had to be helping a lot of countries. But I have said not so true, not true. Obviously, people have not read my book, okay? Because throughout history, since we started to speak towards globalization has disproportionately affected peoples of the global south, okay? And I'm going to make a point, and a point that must be made. I said earlier, and I'm happy that Nick Group is going to be talking about Guyana, because I mentioned Guyana. But I said earlier, and I want those of us who are watching or listening, this is a powerful class. The last couple of classes have been, this semester have been powerful. It has been powerful. For those of us who haven't gotten into the class yet and to the concepts, it is beyond the exam, okay? It is reality. The class deals with reality. Now, I tweeted earlier, and my twin brother and I, Ricardo, will be doing a show called The Pulse, either later tonight or tomorrow. We will continue the issues. But I said earlier, how can the US charge Jamaica? Because this is Caribbean thought. This is Caribbean thought. How can the US charge Jamaica and Haiti and the Caribbean countries tariffs? And by the way, I looked at it, Guyana was on there. Okay, and almost every single Caribbean country is on there. I didn't see Jamaica, but then I learned later on, and I think the Jamaica Observer, the Jamaica Gleaner, and so on, that we are seeing reciprocal tariffs being charged, reciprocal tariffs. So I'm saying, how can the U.S. charge a post-industrial developed country, charge Jamaica, Haiti, and other Caribbean countries tariffs, when our U.S. multinationals and transnationals have killed their markets, the Caribbean markets, and the International Monetary Fund has made them, the Caribbean, into dependent capitalist markets. The US has penetrated and cheapened Caribbean capabilities and markets with our US products. The Caribbean send hundreds of millions of billions of dollars every year in royalties back to the US. So why is Trump charging these emerging and vulnerable countries tariffs? Learn more and about how globalization and unfair trading tactics have impacted the Caribbean. Reading Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income. I tweeted that earlier, and a fuller article is available in the Neoliberal journals at neoliberal.com. Then I said later on, after 2 minutes later, I tweeted, because I was on a rant. Guyana, we're about to hear about Guyana. Guyana found oil, but never had the capability and capacity to extract and enrich the oil into the finished product. So they got US companies to help them. That help has costed them, the Guyanese, 78%, because Guyana only gets back 12% of the profit after they pay the US companies. That's a fact. And you can read it in the upcoming book, Neoliberal Globalization Reconsidered, Unfair Competition and the Death of Nations. And finally, and I said this earlier, the final one before the group presents, One of my friends used to work for Comcast and Comcast Business as a customer service rep, now called call center rep, getting anywhere between 17 to 21 US dollars per hour in Philly. Comcast laid him off and outsourced the job to the Philippines and the Caribbean, where Comcast pays call center reps anywhere between $1 to $3.50 US dollars per day. Remember, now, let me say this again. One of my friends used to work for Comcast in the US, and Comcast Business, the customer service rep, now called call center rep, getting $17 to $21 per hour in Philly. Comcast laid these people off and outsourced the job to the Philippines and the Caribbean, where Comcast pays call center reps anywhere between $1 to $3.50 per day. Yet we charge them reciprocal tariffs up to 10% plus direct tariff on some of the other Caribbean countries like Guyana. They want, I said the US want to have our cake and eat it too. Don't be greedy. Greed leads to glut and then debt. Neoliberal globalization reconsidered. Unfair competition and the death of nations. Anyways, that's it for now. That's it for now. That's it for now. Nick, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Mr. McKenzie, class, colleagues. This is Group 2, and our topic will be exploring islands of the Caribbean, Guyana, and Belize. My group members are Amanda Walters, Heather Johnson, and myself, Nicholas Roberts. Guyana and Belize, two culturally vibrant countries in our Caribbean, provide compelling insights into the enduring influence of Afrocentrism. Guyana, known as the land of many waters, seated on South America's northern coast, while Belize, famed for its coral reefs and rainforests, is situated in Central America. Despite their geographical differences, both countries share a profound connection to African heritage, which has shaped their histories, cultures, and identities. This research explores the Afrocentric roots and influences that define Guyana and Belize, examining their colonial pasts, religious practices, influential figures, demographics, and socio-economic structures. By focusing on the impact of African traditions, the contributions of notable Afro-descendant leaders, and the ongoing influence of Afrocentrism in their modern societies. This study highlights their significance within the Caribbean and their relevance to broader Afrocentric discourse. I will now hand over to Heather.
1 second, and before you hand over to by the way,
country,
Nick, pause the screen, pause for a second, or whoever is sharing, pause for a second. Is there a reason why we have there is something that's hiding the video? I mean, sorry, hiding Nick's face, or is there a way that we can get that?
Oh, what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, we are.
All right, tell me if it.
No,
Hold
to the
on.
on the upper right side of the screen, we're seeing the minimize, the maximize, and the close.
Oh, all
That's
right.
covering the face, your face, Nick.
Oh, shoot. All right, give me a second.
Yeah. But so far, very good. I'm liking it. Very good so far.
Me a slap you, you know, man. Learn to listen, man. Mr. Stop. Cho.
Heather. Don't slap him, Heather. Don't slap him. Oh my God, this thing.
But if you can't remove it, that is fine. We will just carry on. That's okay because we like what
No.
we have. Yeah, continue. Go ahead.
All right then. Jeez. Uh, Come on. It's like it's not allowing me to do it in full screen.
No, that's okay. That's fine. Just do what you do it. Continue with what. No, we already we're seeing the full screen. It's just that it's showing it's covering your face a bit, but
All
we are
right.
okay. We
All right.
actually the visibility though is okay.
All right. Instead of showing a window, I'm gonna just share my screen and done. Hopefully it works.
No, probably that's how it was recorded, so it's fine. You can just carry on with
Hello, no.
much better.
All right,
Yes,
great. Start
yes, much
over or
better.
continue.
You know what? Since we're recording, we may want for recording purposes, let's start from the beginning so that for the editing team, they don't have to do a lot of work in cutting and doing all that stuff. So yes,
All
please.
right. All right, let me mute back my mic. Good afternoon, Mr. McKenzie, class, colleagues. This is group 2, and our topic will be exploring islands of the Caribbean, Guyana, and Belize. My group members are Amanda Walters, Heather Johnson, and myself, Nicholas Roberts. Guyana and Belize, two culturally vibrant countries in our Caribbean, provide compelling insights into the enduring influence of Afrocentrism. Guyana, known as the land of many waters, seated on South America's northern coast, while Belize, famed for its coral reefs and rainforests, is situated in Central America. Despite their geographical differences, both countries share a profound connection to African heritage, which has shaped their histories, cultures, and identities. This research explores the Afrocentric roots and influences that define Guyana and Belize, examining their colonial pasts, religious practices, influential figures, demographics, and socio-economic structures. By focusing on the impact of African traditions, the contributions of notable Afro-descendant leaders, and the ongoing influence of Afrocentrism in their modern societies. This study highlights their significance within the Caribbean and their relevance to broader Afrocentric discourse. I will now hand over to Heather, which will start with our first country, Belize.
Thank you very much, Nick. So let us take a brief history into Belize. So the name Belize is traditionally believed to have been derived from the Spanish pronunciation of the last name of Peter Wallis, a Scottish buccaneer who may have begun a settlement at the mouth of the Belize River in about 1638, yes. So it is also possible that the name evolved from the Mayan word Belex, meaning muddy water, or Belekin, meaning land facing the sea. Also, Belize, formerly known as the British Honduras, was a British colony in the Central America from 1862 until it successfully gained its independence in 1981. Also, Belize, the journey to freedom was marked by the efforts of the leader such as George Price, who tirelessly campaigned for the nation's sovereignty. Belize achieved complete independence on September 21st, 1981, and becoming the last British colony in the Americas. Lastly, Belize is often thought of as a Caribbean country in Central America because it has history similarly to that of English-speaking Caribbean nation. Additionally, Belize situated south. Belize is an island of mountain, swamps, and tropical jungle. It is bounded by the Mexico to the north, Guatemala to the west and south, and the Caribbean Sea to the east. And lastly, the country has a 174-mile coastline. So in Belize, there are different religions. And first, let us look at Christianity. And in Belize, particularly Roman Catholicism and prominent, accompanied by many Protestants. The indigenous Mayan people also have their traditional belief system, which have primarily been woven into the Christian context over the years. Also, religion in Belize is fundamental in community life, with religious holidays and festivals reinforcing national identity and playing an essential role in fostering social cohesion and preserving cultural heritage. Protestants account for about one third of the population, with the largest denomination being Anglican, Pentecostal, Methodist, Seventh-day Adventist, and the Mennonites. Lastly, the evangelical and the Christian fundamentalist churches have been growing rapidly since 1990s. And here we have a pie chart reflecting that of the religion in Belize. When we talk about a country, without a doubt, we have influential and noticeable figure. And in Belize, we have George Price, the first prime minister, and also a celebrated national figure, often referred to as the father of nation. His leadership and commitment to the Belize independence make him a prominent figure in the nation's history. We also have Dean Barrow, who served as Prime Minister from 2008 to 2020, long years he must serve, and he's also recognized for steering the country through significant economic and political reforms. And lastly, let us look at Philip Golson. He is a player in Belize political scene, advocated for sovereignty, and at times we have Cyan Barrow, a prominent musician turned politician, has contributed to Belize's cultural and political realms. So let me hand over to Amanda so she can tell you more about the demographic of Belize.
Thanks, Heather. All right, so the demographic of Belize. Belize's population is approximately 440,000, also exemplifies striking ethnic diversity. The majority of the population is predominantly a blend of European and indigenous ancestry. Alongside them, groups of Creole, Mayan, Garifuna, and Mennonites enrich the cultural landscape. Belize has experienced considerable migration trends from neighboring countries like Guatemala and Honduras, influencing its demographic composition. Urbanization has primarily concentrated in cities like Belmopan and Belize City, while rural areas continue to support significant indigenous and Afro-descendant communities. Here is a chart reflecting the different groups and also the years in which they are represented. Here is a chart reflecting the different groups and also the years in which they are represented on the pie chart. Now we'll look at the socio-political economy. Belize functions as a parliamentary democracy with stable political framework. Its economy primarily revolves around tourism, agriculture, and services. Belize is renowned as a tourist destination celebrated for its natural beauty, including the Great Barrier Reef and ancient Mayan ruin. Belize also is highly dependent on tourism as a major source of foreign income, partly as a result of an increase in cruise ship arrival. Although the country has experienced steady economic growth, it faces ongoing challenges related to its reliance on tourism, susceptibility to natural disasters, and issues of income inequality. Lastly, regarding Belize, we'll look at its current position. Belize is tackling significant barriers to development through reforms in crime management and education. Belize also shows economic growth but confront issues like high public debt, dependence on external factors such as tourism, and an urgent need for diversification to secure sustainable long-term growth. Belize maintains its political stability but contends with significant hurdles due to its small economy and heavy reliance on tourism, alongside challenges such as crime and border disputes with neighboring countries like Guatemala that hinder its development. Now we'll hand back over to Heather, who will reflect on Guyana history.
Thank you very much, Amanda. So let's go down history lane while we look at Guyana. So the path to history in independence for Guyana was characterized by the relentless struggle for political representation. So spearheaded by Chedi Jagan of the People's Progressive Party, the PPP, who advocated for self-governance. Also, Guyana ultimately attained independence from the United Kingdom on May 26, 1966. Also, indigenous people inhabit Guyana prior to the European settlement, and their name for the island Guyana, meaning land of water, that's where the country got its name. So let us look on the religion in Guyana. So Guyana has predominantly Christian faith, right? And within the Christianity, it has the Roman Catholic, it has Anglican and Protestantism widely practiced. So also they have Hinduism and Islam, and this is also common significant followings, reflecting the nation's historical links to South Asia, a result of the indentured laborers brought in by the British during colonial times. Also, these religious influences have profoundly shaped Guyanese traditions, festivals, and social practices, with Hindu and Muslim communities significantly enriching the nation's cultural landscape. There is also a sizable minority of Muslims who, most of them, practice from the South Asian descent. And lastly, the indigenous religion are still practiced by some of the Indian people in Guyana. So here's a pie chart, and you can see the different religion with the percentage from 2002 to 2012. And just like Belize, Guyana has some noticeable figures and influential persons. And firstly, let us look at Forbes Burnham. And in Guyana, he is the first executive president. It is renowned for his significant contribution to developing socialist policy and national identity. Also, we have Chedi Jagan. He served as the country's first prime minister and later as president. Is also a pivotal figure playing a crucial role in the struggle for independence and establishing Guyana's sovereignty. Another noticeable figure is David Granger, the former president, and also we have Claudette Singh. She is the chairwoman of the Guyana Election Commission. Amanda, can you tell us about the demographic, please?
Sure. All right, so regarding Guyana, it's a dynamic population of approximately 790,000, resulting in a low population density across its expansive land area or landscape. This population is distinguished by its rich ethnic tapestry, with Indo-Guyanese constituting about 40% and Afro-Guyanese making up around 30%. Other noticeable groups are the Amerindian, the Chinese, and the Portuguese, contributing to its vibrant mixture within Guyana. This diversity is a direct outcome of the historical migration pattern established during the colonial period, mainly through the indentured labor system and the African slave trade. The socio-political economy, Guyana operates as a democratic republic with a multi-party political system. In recent decades, the country's economic structure has transformed significantly, mainly due to the discovery of extensive oil reserves that have driven economic growth. That has primarily resulted in approximately 750,000 barrels of oils being mined each day. Significant industries in Guyana include agriculture, speaking about the sugar, rice, and timber, mining, gold, bauxite, and oil. The country's GDP has sustainably increased due to the oil sector increasing, and this upward trend is expected to continue in the coming years. However, unemployment and poverty persist, particularly in rural areas. The current status of Guyana. Free and fair election strengthen Guyana's political landscape. Although the country must effectively manage tension among its major ethnic groups and navigate governance issues arising from its newfound oil wealth, economically, Guyana is experiencing remarkable growth fueled by the oil industry, but the nation must take necessary steps to manage this newfound wealth and the responsibility that comes along with it, and ensure equitable distribution among its citizens. Socially, both countries are actively addressing poverty, inequality, and the provision of public services, especially in rural areas. Guyana is focused on overcoming challenges in the healthcare sector, infrastructure, and social services. And now we'll hand over to Nicholas, who will provide us with the conclusion and closing remarks.
Thank you, Amanda. In conclusion, Guyana and Belize are both nations rich in history and diverse cultures, shaped profoundly by their colonial pasts and subsequent struggles for independence. While they exhibit some commonalities, such as their varied populations and dependence on agriculture and tourism, they also encounter distinct challenges related to governance, economic development, and social issues. As they work through these complexities, both countries have the potential to achieve sustainable growth and prosperity. Their political stability and strategic positions in the Caribbean position them as significant players in the region's future. The ongoing development of their infrastructure, social policies, and economic sectors will be essential for ensuring a brighter future for their citizens. That is the end of our presentation. These are our references.
Very good. Thank you so much. I have a question. I noticed that you talk about the Mayans, in Belize, yes? You guys noticed that you never talked about when you talk about the racial makeup or the demographics of Belize. You said that there are 440,000 people living in Belize, yes?
Yes, sir.
And you said that in terms of the makeup of the population, one of the makeup you talk about the Creole and the Mayans. The Mayans, they're part of the Taino people. You know that? Yes? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, the Mayans. So when we talk about the Caribbean, we know that in some part of the Caribbean, not necessarily Jamaica or Trinidad or Barbados, or St. Lucia, but in Grenada and Belize particularly, you notice that they kept and preserved a lot of the indigenous population. When you ask the makeup of Guyana or whatever or Belize, you hear of Mayans, but you don't hear that when you talk about Saint Lucia. You don't hear that when you talk about Jamaica. You don't hear that when you talk about Haiti. Um, to uh to an extent, to some extent, you hear that when you talk about DR, but DR they didn't talk about the Mayans, another set of another group. Did you say the Caribs, I think, was at the DR, but it's quite interesting. But the Mayans, but there wasn't a genocide, it seems. The Mayans still exist today in Guyana. Um, and they still practice some of that tradition. Hinduism is a polytheistic religion. Um, they embrace the worship of it's an inclusive religion. It's an inclusive religion. I guess they would promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because a Hindu, you would share Christianity with a Hindu, and they would accept the faith. But the thing is, for the Christian, for the Hindu, his faith, the practice of his religion does not preclude him from accepting another religion and jettisoning others. Say, for example, in Christianity, there is an injunction that says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father except through me." And many Christians have created a legalistic doctrine out of that particular um, statement to create a universal rule that's okay, the speaking, privileging the worship of their denomination or religion over others. But in the Hindu religion, they do not do that. The Hindus believe that in Hindus, you would find a Hindu that is a Muslim, a Hindu that and also practices religion. So in their culture, they embrace all different types of faiths and worship. That's their religion, and they talk about the idea of the nirvana. Nirvana is to become one with reality. So they don't talk about the heaven. They talk about to be when you die, you become one with existence. The ultimate of all things is that when we become one with reality. That's the nirvana that Hindus talk about. But it's quite interesting that in Guyana you have and both Guyana and Belize. I'm so happy that you guys chose to do. Why did you choose to do Guyana and Belize? It's quite interesting. Why did you guys choose Guyana and Belize? Nick or anybody else that was on the group? Why did you guys choose?
Yes.
Why did you choose Guyana and Belize?
I'm trying to remember, but there was something between those two countries. I don't quite remember. We got the topic a long time ago, but there was something about those two countries. Ooh, well, all right. Let me see if I can look at the group chat, sir.
Yeah, because one of the things you notice the demographics are similar almost, but although Guyana still have an African ancestry, okay. But when you were presenting Belize, you didn't say anything about Africa, yes. Yeah,
Mm.
but when you talk, however, they still both Guyana and Belize, they still have the Mayans are still there. People who ascribe to their Mayan heritage.
Sir,
Yes, go ahead.
sir, you know that it's the same for another country as well, sir. Um, Suriname, they have a very, even though small, they have a very
Yes, I
thriving indigenous
no,
population as
no.
well.
Yes, but aren't you? Yeah, you guys are going to present on Suriname next week or later tonight. Yes.
Yes, sir. And sir, what I realize with everybody that's presenting,
Yeah.
when I look at the history, it's literally word for word, not word for word. It's still different, but
Yeah.
it's still extremely similar. French, Dutch are the French, and the English and the French, and then you have the Arawaks, the same amount of people. Then you have them fighting for the same thing. It's the same religion started there. The same Roman Catholic is. I think that's prevalent more in the other Caribbean countries than in Jamaica. But in most of the Caribbean countries I've seen presented, Roman Catholic um seems to be the one that's leading when it comes to Christianity. And it's
Well, I
always
mean,
Roman Catholic,
well,
then
there,
Protestant and Hinduism as well.
well, yeah, Hinduism. Yeah, we don't see much Hindu. We don't hear of Hinduism in Jamaica. We don't hear much of that.
No. And I'm
Or,
wondering why it's
uh,
always those
um,
most other Caribbean countries that still have
but
those.
in terms of Roman Catholicism or the Roman Catholic Church, so the Roman Catholic Church, they're in Jamaica. They're all over the Caribbean. But in Jamaica, it's probably the Anglican Church or the mainline Protestant Church because Jamaica, Trinidad. Well, I mean, well, I'm not sure what, but uh, there was a heavy influence of the Church of England in the Caribbean. So a lot of some of the Roman Catholic churches changed hands. There were Anglican or Episcopal churches. Because Roman Catholic after the Reformation, when the church, please remember that in the UK. The state church in the UK was the Church of Scotland or the Church of England. That is the Anglican Church. Okay, or in Scotland, it's a Presbyterian church. That's the state church. Um, and the colonies will be the same thing. So, the Roman Catholic Church, there was because one of the kings, the monarchs wanted a divorce, wanted a divorce. The Reformation took shape because he wanted a divorce, and the Roman Catholic Church would not. The Roman Catholic Church with the Emperor Pope himself that was in Italy, Rome. And so they decided to break away, yes, and they started their own church, which became the Anglican Church or the Episcopal Church in the US. All right, so yeah, so therefore, I want the monarchy, the head of the church is the monarch, is Queen Elizabeth or King Charles or whatever the case is. And by the way, many of you, when you talk about Protestantism, many of you are Protestants, just so you know. Okay. Yeah, or evangelicals, or a lot of the mainline churches are like Baptists. That's Protestant churches, and then under Protestantism you have evangelicals, Pentecostal, Apostolic. Okay, so it's a lot of so for you guys have to please remember that when you start thinking about the church. Roman Catholic. It's Christianity, but it's just that the institution it's different after the Reformation. Some churches, some places still like Spain kept the Roman Catholic and kept Rome as the head of the church and the Pope. But in the UK, there was a breakaway, and so the head of the church was the king or the queen or whoever at the time, whoever became king of England was, and the head of the church was the Anglican Church, yes, the Church of England, and in Scotland it's the Presbyterian Church or the Church of Scotland, called the Church of Scotland. But that's part of Protestantism. That's part of the Protestant Church. Okay, no, if you're either so Christianity is two branches. You're either Roman Catholic, you have Roman Catholic, or you have somebody's asking who is next. Yes, who is next? Roman Catholic Church, and then you have the Roman Catholicism and Protestantism. Okay. One more thing I wanted to raise. You said that there's 400,000 people. But therefore, last week we hear that Turks and Caicos was having a migration issue, week before last. The migration issue, where a lot of people. So I want to know more about what's going on in
Sir,
the yeah.
sir, Group 5 representative here. We will be presenting on Turks and Caicos, so I'm asking please if you could refrain from mentioning anything just so you don't go into our little thingy any at all. Thank you.
Yeah, refrain, not reframe, refrain. Yes, but yes, no worries. I won't. I
Thank
didn't.
you for understanding.
Yes, but anyway, but we did know. But this is something that was already mentioned in the class about Turks and Caicos. So notice the migration issue. You talk about migration and how migration is an issue, guys. Please Note that. Another thing is, you talk about the issue, the challenges in Belize and in Guyana. Note you talk about natural disasters and income inequality. Note these issues as throughout the Caribbean: natural disasters, income inequality. By the way, there's one other thing I want to pick your brain about: the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and how many churches in the Caribbean, Christian churches in the Caribbean today, utilize the Ethiopian Orthodox Church scriptures, because they are because the Ethiopian Orthodox Church is in Ethiopia or Africa, yes, and it is the oldest organized Christian institution or religion in the world. Yet most Caribbean people use the European Bible instead of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church's Bible. And they have 70 books, which is the sacred scriptures, and then 180, which is the open scriptures. And anyways, all right, next group present. What group is this?
Sir. So 4 supposed to go down, but sir, now them same one.
Yes, we're going now. Good evening, sir.
Rest
All
of
right.
your
Good evening, class. Thank you for giving us this wonderful research to do. I come on behalf of my group. Members of my group are myself. Sorry. 1 second, sir. Let me just bring up this swag so you can see it. Members of my group are myself, Kedisha, and Shania McLeod, right? So today we're going to look at a comparative analysis between Bahamas and Cayman. Before I ask why these two countries, partly because we wanted to have soul similarities. We want to look at so deep the similarities that we want to see the differences in the similarities. So both countries, as everybody know, is ruled under British. So one emancipate and one get independence and one still under it. So we're gonna look at somewhat the similarities or the different similarities there is. So why these islands? Both are economically significant Caribbean territories, right? Both islands heavily dependent on tourism and other financial services or financial gains. As you know, Cayman have one of the largest offshore banking industries, right? The Bahamas is an independent nation. They gained independence in 1973, whereas Cayman is still under the British colony, which is an overseas territory. There's a great comparison of how political status influences the economic development. And also there's a lot more we can look at in this presentation. That's why we chose these two countries. Now, let's look at the geographical location for the two countries. The Bahamas is about 700 islands and 2,400 keys, which are located in the Atlantic Ocean, just southeast of Florida and north of Cuba. So when I was growing up, there was a young man who take boat and go US. I never understood it until I grew up that he flew to Bahamas and then took a boat from one of the island of Bahamas, right? And then get off somewhere near Florida and just walk off. So this is a practice. This is a illegal migration practice that is practiced by some Jamaicans and other countries because Bahamas is close to Florida. The Cayman Island, as you know, is a British overseas territory. Consists of 3 islands: one, Grand Cayman, Cayman Brac, and Little Cayman. And these are all located western in the Caribbean Sea, south of Cuba, and northwest of Jamaica. Some people in that side of the island might say them can see Cuba. And I've looked through a scope, I think, and saw lights. And they say it was from Cayman. So I'm not sure. I don't believe. So let's look at the two of them political system, the socio-political economy side by side. Now, the Bahamas have a political parliamentary system, right? That constitutionally, there's the monarchy, which is King Charles, the head of state. They gained independence, as you know, July 10, 1973. The government consists of 3 branches: the executive, which consists of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet; legislative, the House of Assembly and Senate; and judicial, Supreme Court of Appeal. Now, how they make the money is literally mostly through tourism. Well, 50% and 60% of employment, 50% is how they make the money through tourism, and the 60% of employment rate is from that industry, right? Of course, the financial services is 15% because Bahamas is also one of the countries that have offshore banking, right? Agricultural and minor roles play a minor role. And challenges include high debt, economic dependency, tourism decline, and some other stuff which you can see here. So I'll go over Cayman side now. Swim Cayman. They don't have any, I don't think they get any independence yet. I don't know what them celebrate as a nation themselves. It's kind of weird because is there nothing to celebrate as an island itself? It have one of the world leading offshore financial hub, right next to Switzerland. It have over 100,000 registered company, despite the population of 70,000. Tourism is 80% of the GDP, right? Luxury and cruise industry. There's no direct tax from the government. Sorry. The government generates revenue from import duties, work permits, and tourism fees. One point to note as well, the police force or the police coalition that is in Cayman is trained. They are trained in Jamaica at our Twickenham Park, right? So when we talk about, let me just move this out the way if you guys are looking. When we talk about religious belief, in Bahamas, Christianity is a dominant religion with over 90% of the population identifying as Christian. And Mr. McKenzie would have said this is partly because, or mainly because, colonization, right? The largest denomination is Baptist, followed by Anglicans, Catholic, and Methodists. The country's strongest Protestant influence stems from the British colonization. So churches play a major role in education, politics, and social life, just like most Caribbean islands, because the churches were once to believe the people who freed some of the slaves, right? So they do Christian holidays such as Easter and Christmas, widely celebrated events like National Prayer Day, and reinforce religious values in society. So what they're saying basically is that religious belief is very strong and the practice is very strong in Bahamas, right? So through Christianity, though Christianity is a major religion, Bahamas is home to small communities of Muslim, Jews, Hindus. But doing this research, we found out that some of these persons from these religions, different religions, they are more modern. So they just came there. They weren't there from early onset. Oh, sorry. For the Cayman Island, 80% is Christianity, primarily religion, right? Major denominations include Church of God, Anglican, Catholic, Baptist, Seventh-day Adventists, right? And also the British plays a major role in shaping the religious landscape of the island, right, through colonization. Religious influence in society, churches impact moral values, education, and lawmaking, just as it is with most of the Caribbean countries. Sunday laws regulate business closures on Sundays for religious observance. And this kind of look at what we did in Jamaica some time ago. There was no gambling on Sunday. There was no cash pot on Sunday. There was no lotto playing on Sunday. But it begs the question, have we gone further from Christ, or have we, moving along closer to capitalism and where everybody can get a chance in life? Begs the question. Caymanians actively participate in church services, missions, faith-based events, right? Again, there's a small population of different organizations, different religious beliefs. Again, this is due to immigration, and these are new people that's coming to the island. And sir, there is spiritual belief like Obia, right? But it's not openly practiced or widely accepted. I now turn over to my classmate, my group mate.
Good evening. Thank you, Jerome. So I'm Khadisha, and I'll be looking at the population, the ethnicity, and language, and the history of both these Caribbean islands. And so I'll begin with the Cayman Island. And the Cayman Islands has a population of 70,000 people, with Grand Cayman being the most populated island due to its status as a financial hub. The island have a significant expatriate community, making up nearly half of the population. And these expatriates come from over 140 territories and countries, and they come to live on the Cayman Island. The Cayman Island population has about 40% of a mixed population, which is a blend of African, European, and Caribbean ancestries. There are also 20% white of the white population. The population is white. So 20% of the population is white, primarily of British and European descent. The Afro-Caribbean is also another 20% of the population, and these are descendants of African slaves. Other nationalities is another 20% of the population makeup, and this includes the Filipinos, Latin Americans, and those persons from North America. The Cayman Islands have a very diverse population with a mix of African and British descent, which is a considerable interracial mixing. A large number of expatriates, as was mentioned before, live in the Cayman Island. In the Cayman Island, the official language is English, which is used in formal setting, but they also have the Caymanian Creole, which is a spoken dialect, which is influenced by British, African, and the Caribbean elements. So the mix of culture that is in the Cayman Islands does influence the Caymanian Creole. Other languages are spoken in the Cayman Islands, such as Spanish, which is considered their second language, and Tagalog, which are as they're spoken from by the immigrant communities. All right. In the Cayman Island, the population, most persons, which is a majority, 95% live in the urban areas, primarily in Georgetown, which is the capital of the Grand Cayman. On the smaller islands, Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, they have a lower population with more rural communities. So on these islands, both, on the three islands, both of them, in Grand Cayman, it is known for its pristine beaches. It is known also for the bustling and hustling, beautiful Georgetown, where there is a lot of natural resources. We have the beautiful beaches, lush tropical forests, and the bustling capital where the number of tourists gathers. And as was said before, it is a very, you'll say, luxurious tourism that is experienced in the Cayman Island. On the Cayman Brac, this is a paradise for nature lovers, where they'll go hiking, they'll go on those hiking trails. There are lots of hidden caves and secluded beaches. On Little Cayman, which is a tiny paradise, there is wonderful beaches and lovely wildlife. Just a little point for you to know. Did you know that all three islands are peaks of underwater mountains? I didn't know that, and while doing the research, I found that out. This is making the Cayman Island underwater life, the aquatic life in the Cayman, very rich, lush, and beautiful. It is a diverse paradise because the coral reefs are wonderful, and there you can also swim with stingrays and the turtles in the island. We will now take a look at the Bahamas. And the Bahamas has a population of approximately 400,000 people, with the majority residing on the island of New Providence, Nassau. The country has experienced steady population growth driven by birth rates and migration from other Caribbean nations. Their ethnic composition is also built of a mixed culture where we have 90% of Afro-Bahamian, right? These are descendants of enslaved Africans brought during the colonial rule. Then we have white and mixed population, which is another 10%, and this includes descendants from British settlers, Haitians, and other Caribbean migrants. In the Bahamas, their main official language is English, which is used in government, education, and media. They also have the Bahamian Creole, which is a local spoken dialect. This is influenced, by African and English linguistic elements, right? In the Bahamas, they have a rich blend, right, of culture, because as the Bahamas is also known, just like Jamaica, as the melting pot, where it is shaped by the history from the British colony, and it is also the Caribbean culture as well as the African heritage. This is what influenced the rich historical cultures in Bahamas. Most of the population, which is 70%, lives in urban areas, particularly in Nassau. Smaller communities are found on the out islands, right, where traditional lifestyle is practiced. We will now take a look at the history of the Bahamas. And the history of the Bahamas dates back thousands of years ago, beginning with the first inhabitants, the Lucayans, Taino people. And for the pre-colonial era, that is before 1492, the Lucayans, an indigenous Taino people group, lived in the Bahamas for centuries. They were skilled fishermen and farmers who built small communities across the highland. However, when the colonial rule began in 1492, and this lasted until 1973, when Christopher Columbus made his first landfall in the New World on San Salvador Island, right? The Spanish colonizers enslaved and deported the Lucayans, leading to their extinction. So the Lucayans were extinct because, as we know, the Taino people were very they weren't hard workers. They were soft and they were gentle, and the hard work when they were being deported and sent to other Caribbean islands to work was too much for them, and they died. The British began settling on the island, bringing enslaved Africans and plantation workers to the island in the 1600s. The Bahamas became a British colony, with Nassau becoming the capital in 1718. And slavery was abolished, leading to the establishment of free African communities in 1834. And on the path to independence, the Bahamian gained international self-governance from Britain in 1964, and 1973, the Bahamians became an independent nation on July 10th, remaining a Commonwealth realm under the British monarch. Today, the Bahamas is a thriving Caribbean nation, balancing tourism, finance, and a cultural heritage. We'll now take a look at the Cayman Islands history. Unlike the Bahamas, the Cayman Islands never had a large indigenous population and remain uninhabited until the arrival of European explorers. So pre-colonial and early settlement began in 1503, when Christopher Columbus sighted the islands during the fourth voyage and named them Las Tortugas. The island was called Las Tortugas because of the large turtle population population that was found on the island. These turtles almost became extinct because the island became very heavily fished or overfished, and they had to put restrictions on persons catching these turtles in order to restore as well as to maintain the turtles in the Cayman Islands. In the 1600s, the islands became a haven for pirates. So shipwrecked sailors and British settlers would come to the Cayman Island and stay there. For the pirates, it was like a haven for them because they could easily go out into the ocean and get their loot and come back and have places to hide, because as was said before, on the island there are caves and a lot of places where they could hide from persons who were seeking them out. So the British rule and slavery began in 1670 through to 1834, and the Cayman Islands were officially ceded to Britain under the Treaty of Madrid. The plantation slavery became part of the economy, though on a much smaller scale than it was in Jamaica and the Bahamas. And in 1834, slavery was abolished and freed African descendants became part of the island's growing population. As we continue the British rule and modern development in the 1830s to the 1900s, the Cayman Islands remained a dependency of Jamaica under the British colonial administration. But then the Cayman Islands became a separate British overseas territory and stopped depending on Jamaica, gaining a more local control. Today, the Cayman Islands remain a British overseas territory with a thriving offshore finance industry and luxury tourism sector. Both the Cayman Island and the Bahamas are vibrant, rich, cultural Caribbean islands where we see their culture, the culture of both the European influence, the African influence, and the Caribbean people being mixed and celebrated. It's seen in their culture, in their cuisine, in their festivals and things like that. I will now hand over to my teammate, Ms. McLeod, who will continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kadisha. So we've looked at why these two islands, we've looked at the population and the history. So now let's talk about what's currently happening. So in the Bahamas, in relation to the government, the economy, and the challenges that they're facing with government and policies, we're seeing that the Bahamas, they now have the right to vote for their own leaders, but there's still a king or queen in place as a symbol of the country. Their current leader is King Charles III, who is the head of state, represented by the Governor General. In regards to their prime minister, one is elected every 5 years and leads the government. Their economy, on the other hand, their tourism makes up around 50% of their GDP, which is gross domestic product, and they have about 15% of that for financial services. However, the economy, we're seeing that they have a few challenges, such as heavy nation debt. They are more reliant on tourism, and they have frequent earthquake damages, which is a cause for concern. Their social and environmental issues is that, well, education is free, so that's not an issue, and the healthcare system is growing, which is great. However, as mentioned before, climate is something that is a big threat. So their climate change is a threat with the rising sea levels and stronger hurricanes. Now, in regards to their youth, unemployment, and crime, this is happening in most of their cities, which is an ongoing concern for them. Most of their challenges are found in economic inequality, which affects many communities. There's also corruption, rising concerns about trust in the government. And then their crime rates is pretty high in their urban areas. Now, moving on to what's happening in the Cayman Islands. So while the Bahamas are more independent, we're seeing that the Caymans are still self-governing British overseas territory. But King Charles III, rather, is also the head of state there. They have, instead of a prime minister, they have a premier who is elected and handles local affairs. Now, their economy is more of an offshore finance. This is 55% of their economy, and tourism is around 40%, which is less than the Bahamas. Their challenges in the economy is that there's a high cost of living. If anybody know how the renting stays in the Cayman Islands, it's way higher than the Bahamas. Now, they have house shortage and there's environmental concerns as well. The island have a great education system and healthcare, but the healthcare system is costly and it's private. Where we saw that the Bahamas healthcare was free, here it's a lot more expensive. Climate change affects coral reefs and increase hurricane risk as well, but it's not as bad as in the Cayman Islands. There's a large expat population which brings cultural richness, but it challenges their interrogation. Their major challenges, on the other hand, is that some residents want more autonomy from the UK. Immigration management is tricky with growing population. So they have house shortage and their population is growing at the same time. Now, the island relies heavily on UK policies, which is also another concern. Now, you can skip to the other section. Thank you. So in the Bahamas, we see that we have a few influential persons back then in the days leading up to now. So we have Mr. Leiden, who was born in 1930, died 2000. He was the first prime minister for the Bahamas and led them to independence in 1973. Mr. Sidney, on the other hand, was the first Black author to win an academic award. You know, that's a big deal. We have Perry and Hubert, who was the former prime minister who shaped modern governance and economic policies. If you guys know about the famous song "Who Let the Dogs Out," I grew up listening to that song, and I'm a Jamaican. This was performed by the Bahaman, so they were a big deal in the Bahamas around that time. We also have Stephen. He is into track and field. We have Exuma. We have Shanae and Buddy Hield, which is a NBA basket player. In regards to the Cayman Islands and their influential persons, we are seeing Sir Vassal. He was the first knight by the Queen. And we have Alden, former premier, played a major role in the economic expansion. And then we have a female, Narisol. She was known for poetry, and most of her work artistic work was based on Caribbean literature. Now, Renaldo, he's also an athlete. And then we have Sidoni, who was a medalist. And then lastly, Kamar. So those are both the influential persons for the Bahamas and the Caymans. Now, while we were researching, we saw that there's a lot of similarities between these countries. Both of them have a parliamentary governance under the monarch. They struggle with economic challenges, including dependency on one or two key industries, and both of them have a hurricane risk. issues like education, healthcare, and crime are a concern in both countries. However, there's a difference where, as mentioned several times, the Bahamas is independent, but unfortunately, the Cayman Islands are still under the British rule and then we have the Bahamas. They depend on tourism, but Cayman Islands depend on finances. We also see that there's around 400 persons living in Bahamas, but the Cayman Islands only have 70,000 persons. So 400,000 for Bahamas, 70,000 for the Caymans. The Caymans is stronger with a national identity, but once again, the Cayman Islands maintain closer ties to British tradition. So we see here that both the Cayman Islands and the Bahamas, they are beautiful. They are thriving islands, nations with their own unique strengths and similar challenges, but they differ in governance, economic focus, but they both face issues like climate change, crime, economic vulnerability, and understanding these similarities and difference has helped us to appreciate their resilience and the importance of strong leadership, sustainable development, and regional cooperation. So those are some of the things that would like to share that we wanted to share with you guys. I hope you learned as much as we did from this presentation.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, we did. I have some questions. I have some questions for you guys. This was an interesting presentation. I would love to, for all the groups that presented, I hope when you submit your whatever you send me, I mean, I want to know where you get your information. I would like the reference, where you get your information. The second thing is, I think you guys mentioned the Lucayan people, and one of the group that presented, did you say that the Lucayan people were wiped out, are all dead?
Well, they were the information said they eventually died.
What? Okay. Where did you get that? Is that true? Since we are academics and we are just we have learned a lot in this class, we have to put our learning into practice when we are also doing critical thinking. Is it true? Based on all that we know, when you get that information, you were reporting it. Did you do any research to find out if there are any traces of the Lucayan people that exist today, and whether or not they were written out of history, because history is written by the victors?
Well, sir, whenever how would I would have to go there and find out if they're actually alive and living, or if they're ostracized or exiled or modernized. No,
We're
I'm not
learning
sure. How
today
would
that
I?
we are learning today that the Indian Heritage Society, the Urban Indian
Sir,
Heritage
but
Society.
even more so, they wouldn't be the same. In Jamaica, we
I
have
believe
a clutch of Indians living in Kingston as well. And those Indians who are living now wouldn't know about the Indian that were first indentured on the island. They know nothing about those Indians.
It's not knowing about the Indians. We are critical thinkers, and we know that history is not gracious to those who are the victims of history. What I'm saying is that, say, for example, we learned that Christopher Columbus discovered. No, he did not discover.
Well, that's true.
Okay.
Sir, I believe in regards to your question, I believe that it's more of a case where the culture died. So while we may or may not have persons living up to that standard, no, the culture is not the same as it was back then.
Well, I always talk about the issue of claim and theft and the way how the world works. I mean, you want to know that no one can. When we talk about the relationship between colonization and theft, when you colonize or when you steal something, you want to make sure that there's no one can challenge you. Okay,
Right. That's what we would have wanted.
legally they have they have made sure that no one can claim ownership of the land. That's why in Haiti, the French is saying that they had to pay them because legally they didn't own the land. It's really the French land, and the people who occupied it have all died. But is that true? That's an argument, that's a legal argument that is part of international strategy throughout history.
Oh, that cannot be true. They're probably poor. What them can't? Them can't dead.
Which one? No, that's the argument though. That is what I'm saying is the argument. That's what they have said.
I'm understanding what you're saying now, sir. I'm understanding what you're saying. So there's
Yeah,
a possibility that them really can't die because you can't kill off, a set of people. But
but you are right though. The reason I'm saying but you are right. What you have provided is right. That's what I have learned. That's what we have all learned. But history suggests DNA analysis reveals that the extinct Taino people never died out. DNA analysis reveals the Taino people who welcomed Columbus to the New World were not eradicated after all. When Columbus arrived, the Caribbean islands were populated by people. The Caribbean islands were populated by people known as the Taino. Most likely they were descendants of the Arawaks, of South America, and Taino was actually just their language at the time. They were known as the Lucayans locally in the Bahamas, Greater Antilles, and the Northern Lesser Antilles areas. They dominated. They courteously greeted Christopher Columbus when he landed in the New World. But within 30 years, according to Spanish accounts, according to who? European accounts. Yeah. So the history you are providing in this class in Caribbean thought is a European history. Because the Spanish, according to the Spanish, the Taino people were all gone. Victims of European pathogens, smallpox in particular, and the brutality of the newcomers. They were weak. We said they were weak. How dare they? These Spanish people called them weak until they died. The locals have long insisted that this isn't true. The people from there said, no, it's not true. But guess what? Who are the arbiters of history? Who are the arbiters of truth? Not the locals. We talk about history from below or the subaltern. Now the people who are affected by the history are now writing the history now. And now they want to outlaw it and ban critical. Anyways. The locals have long insisted that this isn't true. That they were simply written out of history. Now a DNA analysis, I was supposed to try and get the UIHS, and they were supposed to come to the class. I never got a chance. My good friend, Dr. Nolan Fontaine, my fraternity brother, wanted to come and share because they're doing research throughout the Caribbean as well. Now, a DNA analysis reveals the locals were right. And at least one modern Caribbean population includes Lucayan Taino descendants. Anyway, I'll share with you an article about this later on. But this is part of this class, though. Part of this class is this. Yeah, yes, Jerome, go ahead.
I have a question, sir. I don't want to use the word happy, but should I feel a way that my people or my descendants were colonized? Because a part of me kind of feel like, I'm quite content that the colonized happened. Hold on, sir. Hold on first. Because when you're looking at some indigenous country, like maybe Venezuela, the Argentina, the Brasilia, those country, and I'm not talking about the history of the culture of the culture. Those countries are far behind. Jamaica is way ahead than some of those countries.
No, we're not way ahead of Argentina, though.
Come again, sir?
Not Argentina, no.
All right. All right then. We're way ahead of some of them Latin American countries, right? And I know because the advances that where I work in a company that is in 45 countries, and they're in the LAC. And certain things that I do in the LAC, I'm like, that we did that 10 years ago, we did that 15 years ago. It's like, no, they're advancing to certain stuff. Well, some countries in the LAC, in the Latin America Caribbean community, some of them, right?
Well, This is well, yeah, that some countries, yes.
Yeah. So should I not be content with colonization? Should I be upset about colonization? It's just a question I'm just thinking a while ago.
I mean,
Because if we weren't colonized and we were still Arawakians or the more modernized descendants of Arawakians, would we be poor? Would we be worse
And
off?
that's a good question for you to answer. I mean, but we know that the Caribbean is an invention because of European colonization.
It's an
Colonization
invention.
has control. So, but when you ask a question, you have to define the terms. Because when you start to define the terms, then you'll say, no, it's not okay.
hi,
Because,
sir.
hi, how are you, Chantel?
I'm
To be
fine, sir.
to be colonized is to be controlled. It's to strip away your humanity, your dignity, or any value that you have or come with, and to recreate you into new individuals, hybrid individuals, whose histories, whose
Yeah.
future past, who continues to be defined based on where you today. Yes.
Sir. Group 5 is presenting next.
Yeah, oh, there's another presenter. Yes, so the next presenter, I wish we could talk some more. But okay, the next presenter, I wanted to raise up another point about the use of craniology and the skeleton, to show how how the Africans were related throughout history, and how Egyptians were actually Africans from the land of Kemet. So I wish that for the last lecture. We're going to talk about that too. All right, but group 5, you have the floor. The next group is presenting. Sorry, go ahead. But thank you guys for that. And by the way, I didn't hear about the fact that Cayman Islands, prior to 1962, was a colony of Jamaica. I didn't hear you guys say that, and that is significant. Prior to 1962, Cayman Islands was a colony of Jamaica. I didn't hear anybody say that. And by the way, I used to live in Cayman Islands for a while. I lived there for some time, so I know a lot about Cayman Islands. All right,
It was
next
mentioned, sir. It was mentioned.
was mentioned. Good. Go ahead.